What we have been talking about in all of these parliamentary encounters really is about the seeping of a kind of great poison. The evil of Epstein has seeped out into his relationship with Peter Mandelson, which has seeped out into Mandelson's influence on government, which is seeping out still to the way in which government has allowed itself to behave. And it's sort of time for it to stop. And I think that we are approaching the point where we may be able to draw a line, but that point is still quite a long way away because we're dependent on the police releasing their documents. And it's why, thinking in these ways, that I want to ask the Chief Secretary to the Prime Minister that we try a new approach now, that we build on what's already happened, but that we go further so that the House can be more reassured about what is being shown sight of and what it's not being shown sight of. There is, as far as anyone can see, no good reason why the government cannot tell the House more in terms of high level. As I said earlier, the Chief Secretary of the Prime Minister on Monday gave us something more high level in the 4 categories. But as I mentioned in my remarks, there is further that we can go. I also believe that there is no good reason why the information that has been given to the police cannot be given to the ISC. And the government could unilaterally decide to do that, doesn't need to ask anyone's permission, as has been raised by my right honourable friend who used to be the chair of the committee, my right honourable friend who is not in his place, who is a current member of the committee, and my other right honourable friend still is a committee. This House has complete trust, the ISC. It entrusts it with the most confidential material that the state has on offer, strap-level material. And so I don't think anyone here would believe that sharing the material given to the police with the ISC would in any way run the risk of prejudicing a trial. And consequently, I genuinely invite the Chief Secretary of the Prime Minister to give the House that. I also think all of us, even those who are not members of the ISC, should be entitled to know a bit more. And we should be entitled to know about the number of messages that are withheld. We should be given a degree of detail because there is no reason why that would prejudice an investigation or a trial. And I'll just go through a few points and then I'll sit down, Madam Deputy Speaker, and let the Chief Secretary respond. I want to return to his own messages, not because I think he's done anything wrong. I don't believe he has. But he disclosed to us the other day that he had messages that he didn't feel were relevant. And I wonder if he could tell us, they're obviously not in the return, but we need to know, because the humble address said messages that were between ministers and Peter Mandelson should be disclosed. I want to know the process that was gone through with those messages that led to them not being in the humble return. Were they deleted? Were they deleted after they had been shown to officials? Were they shown to officials and decided not to be disclosed? But it would be very good to have clarity because it might give us insight on how other such messages were treated. Second, on the question of Morgan McSweeney's messages, which we know still existed in April this year when he talked to the Foreign Affairs Select Committee about them and said that they they were already in the position of the government because of the inquiry that Wormald had done in September last year. Can he confirm that the process discovered those messages and that consequently that Morgan McSweeney was telling the truth to committee? Do those messages exist? I don't think it prejudices an investigation or a trial to know that those messages exist. Similarly, with Morgan McSweeney's messages, with the Prime Minister's messages, with the Chancellor of the Exchequer's messages, and so on, we deserve to know how many messages to whom are being withheld. There is nothing in that data that would prejudice an investigation or prejudice a trial. And I know that that's what we care about. I know that's what he cares about. And I think if the government were to cooperate in that way, it would show a willing and a transparency that we have not previously had. On the related to this is the issue that I raised that was raised by several other members from the backbench about other forms of electronic communication, particularly pictures, videos, voice recordings and attachments, none of which have made their way into the humble address returns. It seems very unlikely that all of them have been retained by the police, particularly when the messages they're related to are in the humble address return. And it feels like this is something that has slipped through the net. Can he tell us a bit more about that? And lastly, to return to the point the Chair of the Foreign Affairs Select Committee made, and my right honourable friends behind me made, we during the course of this debate, I believe we have ascertained that the ISC did not see the mitigations. The Chair of the Foreign Affairs Select Committee has not been able to detect any mitigations. I think we deserve to know whether there were any mitigations. Even if we can't be told what they were, even if we're effectively being told that they're being retained by the police, there is no good reason why we should not be told whether they exist or not. There is nothing in that information that would prejudice an investigation or prejudice a trial. It is time for the government to just take us to the next level of transparency. I very much hope that that is what the Chief Secretary to the Prime Minister wants to do, because ultimately all of this will come out in due course. And if it does, and it turns out that the government was unnecessarily withholding information, the scandal will continue again and again, and it will infect more and more people. It doesn't need to do that. Let's clear this up now. Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker.
Secretary to the Prime Minister, Darren Jones.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Can I thank members from across the House for their contributions this afternoon and share in the condolences expressed by the Shadow Chancellor of the Duchy of Lancaster on the news of Sir Alex Younger, the former Director General of MI6, who we have learnt during this debate has passed. As I've said to the House before, whilst it is right for members to discuss process and how the government has responded to the humble address, we must not neglect to remember the women and girls who are at the very heart of this matter. Their suffering cannot be forgotten in this pursuit for justice, a pursuit that has been denied to them for too long. On that point, can I start by particularly paying thanks to my honourable friend, the member for Pontypridd, for her powerful speech this afternoon, and take the opportunity to thank her for the work she carried out so diligently as part of this government as the Minister for Victims. The accounts that she has shared with this House this afternoon from victims like Lisa are harrowing and should remind us of the anger and suffering they rightly continue to feel each time we have had one of these debates. But my honourable friend's speech has made me think, Madam Deputy Speaker, that just reading the words on this page alone feels insufficient in the context of the cultural challenges that she raised. And I think, with your permission, I'd like to just take a moment to take that opportunity to ask myself questions about my relationship with Peter Mandelson. Did I consciously ignore the stories that followed Peter Mandelson? Indeed, know about many of them from many, many years ago. I don't think that I did. Did I ever ignore warnings that were put to me about Peter Mandelson? I didn't receive any to do so. But as I reflect on my honourable friend's speech, it made me think, did I, at best, subconsciously treat Peter Mandelson differently because I believed him to have influence and power within the Labour Party? And I think the answer to that question is yes, I did. Have I benefited from that relationship in the time I've been an elected politician? I think in part the answer to that question is yes, I did. And for that I'd like to apologise to the House, to the victims, to Lisa, and commit to then doing something about it. And in the first instance, can I say that I hear my honourable friend's request for a meeting with the victims of Jeffrey Epstein. I know that there is a request with number 10 for the Prime Minister to do so, but if she thinks it's appropriate, I make myself available for that meeting to discuss the issues that she has raised. And can I also just say, Madam Deputy Speaker, that I know my honourable friend will continue to be a strong advocate from the backbenches for the action this government is taking to halve violence against women and girls, as well as to pursue the duty of candour on which I know she works so hard. And I look forward to continuing my work with her on these important issues. Briefly, yes.
The Minister has shown once again what a decent man he is, and he is doing a very difficult job in defence of somebody who knew a lot more than he did. He was not Chief of Staff at the time that the Mandelson appointment was being carried out. And on page 8 of the first bundle, we have the note from the private secretary to the Prime Minister, which says, we have sought a due diligence review, and your Chief of Staff, Morgan McSweeney at the time, has discussed Peter's relationship with Jeffrey Epstein, which we will go through with you, but your Director of Communications is satisfied with his responses to questions about contact. Yet we also know from earlier in the bundle that the Prime Minister specifically knew that Mandelson had stayed in Epstein's flat while Epstein was in jail for abuse of an underage girl. So the Prime Minister knew all that at the time. And then, what is the purpose of having a box at the end of this marked for the Prime Minister's comments on the alternatives he's being given, when, in fact, as we now know, clearly explained by the Paymaster General, there has been no redaction, the Prime Minister did not comment. Why did the Prime Minister withhold any remarks on this highly contentious matter, and where did he comment, and where did he give his decision? Because he certainly didn't do it in the place that he was supposed to do it.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. In relation to the first part of the Right Honourable Gentleman's question, he knows, because I've confirmed at the dispatch box to the House previously, that questions were put by the Prime Minister's former Chief of Staff to Peter Mandelson following the due diligence report to ask for further information about the stories that had been reported in the newspaper, and that Peter Mandelson replied to those questions. That information was then considered by those in number 10. As I've confirmed to the House, that document, the questions and its answers, are one of the documents that have been held by the Metropolitan Police, and I have been advised repeatedly that I am not permitted to disclose what I have seen in that document on the floor of the House. And so I'm afraid it's just going to have to be one of those questions that remains until such time as the Metropolitan Police publishes its documentation. In relation to the second part of his question, I refer the Right Honourable Gentleman to the Paymaster General's answer earlier today, which is the answer to that question.